Our minds get stuck on things that haven't happened. We worry about what we might lose, what could go wrong, what the future might bring. It feels like a modern problem, but the Stoics saw it 2,000 years ago. They had an answer for it. They called it Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. Seneca said we should rehearse it in our minds: exile, poverty, illness, death, all the other misfortunes. He wasn't trying to make us despair. He was pointing to a kind of strength. So we're going to look at why they did this, and how it works, how it turns that fear into something solid, into resilience. We'll look at the psychology of it, where the idea came from, and how you can actually use it. By the end, you'll have this tool for the fear of what you don't know. We'll see how walking into your worst fears in your mind. What happens when you stop running from the shadows? What's the one future you're most afraid to think about? Premeditation of evils is a training drill. It's not the same as anxious worrying. Modern anxiety is chaotic, involuntary. It's a storm of what-ifs that leaves you helpless. This practice is the opposite. It's controlled, intentional. You do it from a place of calm strength. You choose the time and the topic. You walk into the scenario deliberately. You're not dragged into it by fear. The goal is simple: to remove the shock value from potential hardship. Think of it like a fire drill. You don't practice because you believe the building will burn down. You practice so that if the alarm ever sounds, your response is calm, clear, automatic, not paralyzed by panic. That's the Stoic aim: to rehearse life's potential alarms so they lose their power to terrify. Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to rehearse in his mind exile, loss, illness, conflict. He wasn't wishing for these things. He was building a kind of mental immunity. By visiting these possibilities in your imagination, you confront the raw emotion of fear on your own terms. You answer the question, what is the worst that could happen? And then you look at it squarely, and in doing so, you often find the terrifying phantom loses its form. It becomes a set of circumstances, difficult perhaps, but manageable. A modern parallel might be mentally walking through a difficult conversation with your boss before it happens. You consider what you might say, how they might react, what your options are if it goes poorly. You're not being negative, you're being prepared. And this preparation drains the unknown of its paralyzing power. So consider for a moment, what is one common future worry you instinctively avoid thinking about? The possibility of a job loss, a health challenge, a personal conflict. Notice how your mind wants to shy away. That shying away is the very space where fear grows. The Stoics suggested we walk right into that space, not with dread, but with the steady gaze of a student learning the terrain. What if you could take the sting out of bad news before you ever got it? That's the point of the Stoic exercise. It's not about predicting the future. It's not about inviting misfortune. It's about detoxifying fear itself. The unknown carries this powerful charge, this jolt of adrenaline and dread that can freeze you. And by rehearsing a difficult scenario in vivid detail, you're performing a kind of emotional inoculation. You expose yourself to a small, controlled dose of the mental experience, so that the real thing, if it ever comes, doesn't overwhelm your system with surprise. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. In his private meditations, he talked about greeting each day expecting interference, ingratitude, hardship. He trained himself to see those things not as strange violations, not as unbearable breaks from how life should be, but as natural parts of the human experience. As predictable as winter following autumn, that shift in perspective is everything. When you stop seeing potential hardship as a shocking injustice, and start seeing it as a possibility within the natural order, your relationship to it changes. You move from asking, "What if this happens to me?" to saying, "If this happens, I will handle it." You can see it in how elite athletes train. They don't only visualize perfect performances. They also mentally rehearse mistakes, setbacks, moments of extreme pressure. A gymnast might visualize a stumble on the beam and then see herself recovering her balance, continuing the routine. That mental practice reduces the panic of the unexpected. When a real error happens in competition, her nervous system isn't hijacked by surprise. She's already been there in her mind. She knows the path forward, so take a moment with that. Pick one personal fear about the future, something that feels heavy, and instead of pushing it away, walk through it calmly in your imagination. What would the first day look like? What practical steps would you take? Who might you talk to? You're not wishing for this event, you're just mapping the territory. And in that mapping, you might find the landscape loses its monsters. It becomes a place you could navigate, difficult but not impossible. The paralyzing fear of the unknown begins to dissolve, replaced by a quiet awareness of your own capacity. The Stoics knew we're afraid of things we can't define. A shadow on the wall can be terrifying until you turn on the light and see it's just a coat on a chair. The unknown works like that. It's formless, and our imagination fills that void with the worst possibilities it can think of. That's where the paralysis comes from. We're not frozen by a specific, concrete problem. We're frozen by the ghost of 1,000 problems that haven't even taken shape yet. Premeditation is turning on the light. By deliberately defining a potential hardship, you pull it out of the shadowy realm of vague dread. You give it edges, a shape, a name. You move it from the terrifying world of what if into the manageable world of what is. And what is, even if it's difficult, is something you can work with. This is how we reclaim a sense of agency. Epictetus drew a line between what's within our control and what's not. Our judgments, our intentions, our efforts, those are ours. External events, the actions of others, whether we get the job or keep our health, those are not. Worrying about the unknown is trying to control the uncontrollable, but preparing our mind for it, that is squarely within our power. It's the act of taking back control where it actually exists. Think of preparing for a job interview. The vague fear is I might fail, I might be rejected, it will be awful. That fear is paralyzing. It makes you nervous, it clouds your thinking. Now apply the Stoic drill, define it. What does rejection actually look like? You get a polite email. You feel disappointed for a day. You update your resume and apply for 3 more positions. You have a conversation with a mentor. By walking through the scenario, you've transformed a monster into a sequence of events, most of which are actions you can take. You haven't guaranteed success, but you have guaranteed you won't be destroyed by the possibility of failure. Your calm preparation for either outcome actually improves your performance. Because you're no longer carrying the heavy weight of undefined terror, so pause and consider. What vague fear in your life could you bring into clearer focus today? Is it a financial worry, a relationship concern, a professional risk? Don't analyze it yet. Just name it. Give the shadow a simple, clear label. That single act is the first step in reclaiming your agency from the unknown. Worry builds a cage. Premeditation forges a key. It's not about the subject. It's about your posture toward it. One traps you in a loop of helpless dread. The other moves you toward readiness. Passive worry is something that happens to you. It's an involuntary storm of thoughts. It leaves you exhausted, circling the same frightening possibilities. There's no resolution. It's draining. It leads nowhere. The Stoic practice is something you do. It's a conscious exercise. You set a time limit. You enter with intention. You might say, for the next 15 minutes, I'll think through this one possibility. And when the time is up, you close it. You don't carry it all day. Seneca wrote about this. He called it the folly of suffering in advance. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Worry is that suffering in your imagination. Over and over with no purpose, premeditation is visiting that same imagined place, but with a mission. To look at it, to understand it, to plan for it. The goal is to move energy from the emotional realm into the practical one. Take a modern worry, personal finances. Passive worry is a vague, gnawing fear about money. It pops up at 3 in the morning. What if I lose my job? What if a big bill arrives? How will I pay for everything? The thoughts spin. They create anxiety. But they produce no plan. They just leave you feeling more afraid, less capable. The Stoic shift turns that worry into an exercise. You sit down in a calm moment. You deliberately consider, what would I do if my income stopped next month? You walk through it. You look at your savings. You list your essential expenses. You research what support is available. You might sketch a bare-bones budget. You identify a first step, updating a resume, reaching out to your network. The fear doesn't vanish, but it's now attached to concrete steps. The unknown has been mapped. The paralysis breaks because you've moved from fear to preparation. So ask yourself about a current concern. When your mind drifts to that fear, does it start a spiral of helpless worry? Or could it be the signal for a short, focused session of planning? The shift is subtle, it's profound. It's the difference between being a prisoner of your thoughts and becoming the architect of your response. The Stoics had a very specific idea of what evil meant. It wasn't about some cosmic force or random bad luck. It was about judgment. An event by itself wasn't good or bad. It was just an event. What made it evil was our own judgment of it. Our own resistance, our complaint. The suffering came from us insisting it shouldn't have happened. And premeditation is about dissolving that resistance before it forms. It's about seeing a potential challenge not as a violation, but as the material you're given to work with. It's the test your character was built for. Marcus Aurelius wrote this down. He said the obstacle in the path becomes the path. What stands in the way becomes the way forward. So a setback isn't a stop sign. It's the new direction. That's the core of it. You walk through it in your mind first. So when it happens, your first thought isn't why me. It's this is what's happening. And here's how I meet it: with courage, with justice, with wisdom. You reframe it from a catastrophe to an opportunity to practice your virtue. There's Seneca, the philosopher. He was exiled by the Emperor Claudius, sent to Corsica, stripped of his wealth, his status, removed from Rome. By any standard measure, that was a disaster. But his letters from exile don't show self-pity. They show a man treating his circumstance as a laboratory. He wrote about the simplicity there, the clarity. The chance to study and write without distraction. He wasn't pretending it was pleasant. He was demonstrating that his well-being didn't depend on his location or his standing. The event was indifferent. His judgment of it was what mattered. That's where good and evil actually were. So you think about a past difficulty, a job lost, a plan that fell apart, a conflict. At the time, it just felt like misfortune. But with this lens, you look back. Can you see how it served as a test? What did it reveal about your resilience? Did it force a growth you wouldn't have chosen, but now value? That shift in perception is the quiet power of premeditation. It prepares you to meet life not as a series of random blows, but as a continuous invitation. An invitation to become who you are capable of being. Resilience isn't something you're born with. It's more like a muscle. You build it, and the way you build mental resilience is by lifting mental challenges. That's where daily premeditation comes in. It's your training regimen. You're not waiting for a crisis to see if you're strong. You're building that strength on purpose, one small rehearsal at a time. Every time you walk through a tough scenario in your mind, you're strengthening those neural pathways, the ones for calm and reason. You're teaching your mind to default to clarity when pressure comes. Not to panic. The Stoics understood this. They saw life as an ongoing training ground, not a series of peaceful moments that sometimes get interrupted. Every day was a chance to practice. Epictetus put it plainly: difficulties are things that show what men are. The challenge doesn't create your character. It reveals it, and what it reveals depends on the training you've done beforehand, your preparation, those mental rehearsals. Think of a firefighter. They don't wait for the alarm to learn how to handle a hose or navigate a smoke-filled room. They train constantly in controlled, simulated environments. So when the real emergency comes, their response isn't a frantic guess. It's the product of ingrained habit. Their resilience under pressure comes directly from their preparation. Your mind works the same way. Modern resilience training embraces a similar principle. So does mindfulness. They encourage leaning into discomfort, not running from it. A mindfulness exercise might ask you to sit with a difficult emotion, to observe it without judgment, to let it be there. That's not so different from the Stoic rehearsal. You're not fighting the feeling of fear, you're making space for it, you're getting acquainted with its texture. So when life presents a version of that feeling, it's not a stranger breaking down your door. It's a familiar guest, an unwelcome one maybe, but you know how to proceed. So consider one small mental challenge you could lift today. It doesn't need to be a catastrophic fear. Maybe it's the possibility of a critical comment on a project you're proud of, or the thought of having a difficult conversation, a necessary one. For just a few minutes, walk through it. What would you feel? What would a grounded response look like? You're not inviting the criticism. You're just strengthening your capacity to meet it. With poise, this daily mental lifting, this quiet rehearsal, is how you forge an unshakable core. It's how you make sure that when the winds of fortune shift, you don't collapse. You bend and then you stand firm. A rehearsed mind is a calm mind, because if the mind has already walked the path, the body can follow. That's the gift of it. It's not about expecting the worst. It's about making sure that no matter what happens, your best self is the one who shows up. The cognitive benefit is deep. You pre-decide your values, your reactions in a state of calm. You build a kind of mental blueprint. You stop panic from taking the wheel. You stop it from making decisions you'll regret later. In a crisis, there's no time for deep debate. Your response will be whatever's most ingrained, whatever's most practiced. The Stoics aimed for that, to make virtue the practiced, automatic response. Seneca wrote about this. He said, "Premeditation lets us meet events not with raw, startled emotion, but with a plan, a pre-formed plan. We've already judged the event in advance. We've already decided how we'll view it, how we'll proceed. So when it arrives, we're not reacting, we're enacting a choice we made long ago." It's the difference between being a leaf tossed in a storm and being the captain who's already charted a course. The storm is the same, the experience is not. Think of a fire drill. In a quiet, controlled environment, you learn where every exit is. You practice moving calmly to the safe area. So if smoke ever fills the hallway, your feet know where to go. They know before your conscious mind even processes the alarm. The rehearsal prevents chaos. It creates order out of potential terror. Your mental fire drills work the same way. Visualize a difficult conversation, and you rehearse listening calmly instead of reacting defensively. Walk through a financial setback, and you rehearse creating a plan instead of spiraling into despair. You're programming your default setting. So here's a question. In what single area of your life would a mental fire drill be most valuable right now? A high-stakes meeting at work, a tense family discussion, the possibility of a personal disappointment. Identify that one space, and then, in a quiet moment, walk through it. Not with fear, but with the deliberate intention of a director blocking a scene. Decide in advance how you want to show up, what principle you want to guide you. That simple act of foresight builds an inner composure, a composure that nothing outside of you can easily shake. The Stoics practiced premeditation. They knew security is a mirage. We chase it, we build our lives around it, but it's a story we tell ourselves, a fragile story. They saw what we forget. Everything we have is on loan. Our health, our relationships, our status. It can all change in a moment, and the anxiety about the future, it isn't just about bad things happening. It's about this exhausting attempt, to lock the doors against a world that's fundamentally unlocked. Premeditation dissolves that. It asks us to stop pretending we can build a fortress. Instead, it teaches us to find strength not in the walls, but in our ability to stand firm when the walls come down. That's the freedom they offered. Freedom from the anxiety of clutching what you can't hold. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders to himself about this. He'd note the names of famous emperors now dust. He reflected on bustling cities gone silent. He spoke of life as a brief sojourn, a play. He wasn't being morbid, he was practicing realism. By keeping impermanence at the front of his mind, he was cutting the root of attachment. If you know the vase is already broken, you can enjoy its beauty without the fear of dropping it. His meditations were a daily rehearsal of that truth. He was the most powerful man in the world, yet he trained his mind to find its center not in his palace, but in the acceptance of its loss. His power lay in that acceptance. We face different uncertainties, but the structure is the same. An ancient Roman worried about plague or invasion. We worry about job stability, a diagnosis, the stability of relationships. The specifics change, the underlying fragility does not. The modern illusion might be the belief that a job title guarantees a career, or that a clean bill of health today means one tomorrow, or that love is a permanent possession. When we cling to these as guarantees, we set ourselves up for a particular suffering, the suffering of shock when life demonstrates its fluid nature. So here's a quiet question. What is one illusion of security you cling to most tightly? Is it the idea that your financial plan is foolproof, that your social circle will always be there? That your good health is permanent? Don't judge it, just identify it. See it as a story, a helpful story maybe that lets you function, but a story nonetheless. The Stoic practice isn't about abandoning the story and living in dread. It's about reading the fine print. It's about acknowledging in a calm way that the story could change. And in that acknowledgement, you do something. You transfer your trust. You stop trusting in the permanence of circumstances, and you start trusting in your own capacity to meet whatever arises. Your safety net becomes your own character, your resilience, your ability to adapt. That is a security that can't be taken from you because you built it from the inside. Thinking about loss to feel more grateful, it sounds backwards, but the Stoics saw it as a straight line to joy. They called it negative visualization. It's the other side of that same coin. You don't just walk through hardship to build toughness. You do it to sharpen your appreciation for what's right in front of you. By mentally taking away the comforts you rely on, the people you count on, you see their value with fresh eyes. You stop assuming they'll always be there. You start to enjoy them not as permanent things, but as gifts that are here, right now. This practice turns ordinary life into a source of wonder. Seneca had a powerful exercise. He suggested starting each day by thinking it could be your last, not to fill the day with fear, but to fill it with a sharp, purposeful appreciation. If this were your final day, how would you treat the people you love? How would you savor your morning coffee, the sunlight through the window, the simple ability to walk and breathe? You wouldn't waste a moment on small grievances or trivial worries. You'd be fully present. You'd see the extraordinary in the utterly ordinary. That's the insight. By holding the fragility of things lightly in your mind, you don't lessen your enjoyment. You enlarge it. You learn to love the world as it is, knowing it's on loan. Try a practical version of this now. Think of one simple blessing, your health if you have it, a relationship you value, the comfort of a safe place to rest. Now, for a few seconds, consider its absence. Don't dwell in fear. Just acknowledge the reality that it isn't guaranteed. Then let that thought go and return to the present. Notice what happens. The blessing often feels sharper, clearer. The background noise of complaint fades. The warmth of a friend's voice sounds sweeter. The ease of a pain-free movement feels like a miracle. This contrast doesn't create sadness, it creates depth. It turns taking for granted into active gratitude. So before moving on, do that quick exercise. Pick one ordinary good thing in your immediate world. The device you're listening on, the clothes you're wearing, the simple fact of a quiet moment. Briefly consider life without it and then return. See if your relationship to that object, to that moment, hasn't subtly changed. This is how the Stoics cultivated a rich inner life, independent of circumstance. By regularly touching the void, they learned to truly see the light. Fear grows when reason isn't there to speak. This isn't about giving in to feeling. It's about thinking it through. When you walk through a hard situation beforehand, you're not trying to feel the fear more. You're looking at it with reason. With a clear light, you ask simple things. What are the actual odds of this happening? If it did happen, what would it really do to my life? Not the disaster story my feelings are telling. And what do I have to deal with it? What's inside me? What's outside me? That process of looking at it rationally, that's often where the phantom gets smaller. The emotional brain, the part that worries, it magnifies things. It takes a possibility and makes it a certainty. It takes something you could handle and makes it seem like the end of the world. Reason's job is to fix the scale, to bring the picture back into focus. This is really what Stoicism is about. Epictetus said it. It's not events that disturb us. It's our judgments about them. The event itself is neutral. It just is. The suffering, the disturbance, the feeling stuck, that comes from the story we tell ourselves about it. The judgment that this is unbearable, that this shouldn't have happened, that this ruins everything. Premeditation is practicing to write a different story before it happens. A story written by reason, not by panic. Take a common social fear, the fear of saying something awkward in a big meeting, of being judged or rejected. The emotional reaction paints a scene. Everyone stares. They think you're incompetent. Your reputation is ruined. Your career stalls. Now run the reason check. What's the most likely outcome? Maybe someone is confused for a second. You clarify your point. The conversation moves on. People are usually thinking about their own part, not picking yours apart. Have you ever judged a coworker harshly for one small stumble? Probably not. The real impact is tiny, often forgotten by lunch. Your rational look shows the fear was built on a distorted judgment, not on the probable facts. So here's a quiet thing you can do. Think of one worry you have right now, the kind that nags at you. For a moment, mute the emotional story. Ask reason to step forward. What's the most likely rational outcome here? Not the worst-case fantasy, the statistically probable mundane reality. You might feel the tension start to soften. The big shadow turns into a simple shape, something you can manage. That's the quiet power of bringing your mind to meet your fear. You're not arguing with the emotion. You're just giving it the facts it's been ignoring. And in that space between the fear you feel and the reality you examine, you find your freedom to act. By visiting the future in your mind, you can come back to the present. That's the paradox. We think worrying keeps us safe, but it takes today from us. It scatters our attention. We end up half here. The Stoic rehearsal, done right, reverses that. It's not about living in the future. It's about releasing its grip. Once you've walked through a possible hardship and accepted it could happen, you've closed the file for now. Your mind can set it down. You've discharged that anxious energy pulling you out of the moment. You're no longer haunted by a ghost of what might be. You're free to engage with what is. This is where Marcus Aurelius anchors his philosophy. He reminds himself the present moment is the only slice of time we truly have. The past is gone, the future isn't here yet. All our power, all our action exists right now. He wrote about focusing on the task at hand, not as a burden but as a point of engagement. To do it with full attention, with excellence. He saw that a mind cluttered with future fears can't do that. It's distracted, it performs poorly, it misses the life it's supposed to be living. Premeditation clears that clutter. It's like a mental filing session. You take the vague, frightening future memos and you give them a folder. You label it. You put it in the cabinet. Now your desk is clear. Your workspace is the present moment, and you can give your full attention to the work in front of you. This connects to modern mindfulness. A core aim of mindfulness is to train attention to rest in the present, to notice when the mind wanders into worry about tomorrow or regret about yesterday, and to gently bring it back. The Stoic practice supports this. By consciously examining those future worries in a dedicated time, you satisfy the mind's need to process them. You tell your brain, I have seen this, I have considered it, it is noted, now we can return. Without that examination, the worry nags. It pulls at your sleeve constantly, fragmenting your focus. Think of trying to read a book while a television in the next room plays a distressing news report. You can't concentrate. The Stoic move is to walk into that room, turn off the television, and close the door. Now you can read, now you can be present, so take a quiet inventory. How much of your mental energy right now is tied to a future fear, not a practical plan but a background hum of what if? The weight of a deadline, the unease about a conversation, the low-grade concern about someone's health. Just notice it, don't fight it, just acknowledge its presence. That recognition is the first step. The next step, when you have a quiet 15 minutes later, is to give that fear its dedicated time. Walk through it with reason. Map it out and then consciously close the session. You might find that when you return to the present, it feels a little roomier, a little quieter. Your attention isn't pulled in two directions. You are here, and here is the only place you can ever actually live. The ancient world didn't think in terms of stability. For the Stoics, uncertainty wasn't an idea. It was just the air. Seneca was advising emperors in a palace where a friend one day could be an enemy the next. Marcus Aurelius was leading armies, dealing with a plague, governing an empire that was always under strain. Their philosophy didn't come from a quiet library, detached from everything. It came from a furnace, from real, immediate danger. For them, mental preparation wasn't some luxury. It was a survival tool, a way to keep clarity, to keep character when the world outside was falling apart. Think about the backdrop. Seneca, before he was forced out of public life, he was an advisor to Nero, an emperor whose reign kept getting more volatile. The political climate was all personal risk. A wrong word, a gesture that got misinterpreted, that could mean disgrace, exile, or worse. His writings on facing exile and loss, those weren't abstract. They were the notes of a man who knew he was living on the edge of a cliff. Marcus Aurelius wrote his private meditations not from a place of peace. He wrote them from military camps. Along the Danube frontier, during a pandemic, the Antonine Plague, he was surrounded by hardship, by loss, by the constant pressure of leading in a crisis. Their practice of premeditation, that was their anchor. It was how they got their minds ready to meet chaos without becoming chaotic themselves. Their turbulence was external and often brutal: political purges, military conflict, widespread illness. Our modern turbulence, it often feels more internal. Economic pressure, social anxiety, the relentless pace of information, the fear of personal failure, of irrelevance. The sources are different, but the psychological effect can be the same. That feeling of the ground shifting under your feet, that threat to your security, to your sense of control. The Stoic tool works for both landscapes because it goes to the root, the mind's reaction to unpredictability. So, take a moment. What does turbulence look like in your world? Is it the volatility of a global economy affecting your job, the rapid shifts in technology, in social norms, the personal upheavals, relationship changes, health concerns? The scale might differ, but the need for an inner anchor doesn't. The Stoics, facing threats we can barely imagine, they developed this mental technology not to escape their reality, but to navigate it with dignity. That's its enduring power. It's a tool made for stormy seas, tested in some of history's roughest waters, and it's just as vital now for navigating the complex currents of a modern life. Here's a basic structure you can use, a simple framework to take this old idea and turn it into a modern exercise. Think of it like a mental training session. Something you can do in 15 quiet minutes. The goal isn't to sit in negativity, it's to walk through a possibility with clarity, so you can walk back out with strength. Start by choosing a specific, realistic concern, not a vague anxiety about the future. Pick something tangible. It could be the possibility of a critical performance review at work, or a difficult conversation with a family member you know is coming. The key is specificity. You're not rehearsing everything bad that could happen. You're focusing on one scenario. That gives your mind a defined task, not an endless field of worry. Next, vividly imagine the worst-case scenario. Give it detail. Walk through it in your mind's eye. If it's that professional criticism, picture the setting, the tone of the conversation, the specific words that might be said. Feel the initial sting of disappointment, the heat of embarrassment. Don't shy away from the emotional texture. The point is to bring the shadow into the light, to give it form so it's no longer a formless terror. You're meeting the emotion on purpose in a controlled environment. Now, step 3 is crucial. Analyze your rational response and your values. This is where you shift from feeling to thinking. Ask yourself what you would actually do next, what practical steps you would take. Would you ask for specific examples to understand? Would you draft a plan for improvement? And more importantly, what value would guide you? Would you choose to respond with humility and a desire to learn rather than defensiveness? Would you remember that your worth isn't defined by one piece of feedback? This step is where you reclaim your agency. You move from being a victim of the scenario to being the author of your response within it. Finally, let it go and return to the present. Close the mental exercise deliberately. You might take a deep breath or physically stand up and stretch. Acknowledge that you've done the work. The future is still uncertain, but you are now prepared. Your mind has been inoculated. You can bring your full attention back to the present moment, to the task or the person in front of you, without that nagging pull of the unknown. This is the disciplined exercise Epictetus spoke of. It's training for the soul. You're not doing this to feel bad. You're doing it to ensure that if life presents you with a version of this challenge, your first reaction isn't blind panic. It's the calm recall of a plan you've already sketched. Your values get to drive, not your fears. So here is a quiet challenge. Before this day ends, find just 10 minutes. Choose one small, specific concern that's been hovering at the edge of your mind. Walk through these 4 steps. Choose it, imagine it, analyze your grounded response, and then let it go. Notice what shifts. You might find the fear hasn't vanished, but its power to paralyze you has quietly dissolved. This isn't about staying in the dark. That line matters. Premeditation is a drill, a focused exercise. It's not a permanent state. The Stoics wanted a clear mind, a steady one. They called it ataraxia. Tranquility, that was the point, not a mind always covered in fear. They practiced this to be free, not to be grim. And to get that freedom, the practice needs boundaries. A clear start and a clear end. You step into the rehearsal, you do the work, then you step back out into your life. You take action, you engage. The moment it turns into rumination, a negative loop, you can't leave, it stops being stoic. It becomes a prison of its own. Rumination is passive. It goes in circles, it drains you. It's like being stuck in a room with a bad news broadcast you can't turn off. And the volume just keeps rising. Premeditation is different. It's active. It has a direction. It's you walking into that room, studying the broadcast for a set time to understand it, then turning it off and walking out. You've gained information. You haven't lost your peace. The difference is control and duration. A 5-minute rehearsal where you map a scenario and your response, that's a tool. 5 hours of helpless worry about the same thing, feeling the anxiety with no resolution. That's a trap. One builds resilience, the other wears it down. The Stoic ideal was a life of action, action informed by wisdom, not paralyzed by what might happen. Seneca wrote letters, he governed, he engaged in philosophy. Marcus Aurelius led armies, he ran an empire. Their mental rehearsal served a purpose. It cleared the decks for action. It didn't replace action with anxiety. They used the tool to protect their ability to do good work in the world, not to withdraw from it. So here's a point to consider. In your own life, when you face uncertainty, what do you tend to do? Do you avoid the thought completely, push it away until it grows in the dark? Or do you get caught in a cycle, playing the same worried thoughts on repeat without ever moving toward a plan? Both are sides of the same coin, a loss of agency. Avoidance and obsession are just different ways of not dealing with the fear directly. The Stoic path goes right through the middle. It asks for a brief, courageous visit to the heart of the concern, then a deliberate return to the present task. It turns the energy of fear into the clarity of preparation. That's the balance. The practice is a means to an end. The end is a life lived with your eyes open and a heart not weighed down by dread. Fear isn't something to defeat. It's more like a raw material. The Stoics, they saw that first jolt of fear as a kind of ore, unrefined, heavy, and they built a practice around refining it. Taking that leaden feeling of dread and turning it into something else, into a steady readiness. That's the alchemy here. It's not about getting rid of the initial feeling. That surprise, the tightness in your chest, the adrenaline when you imagine losing something, that's just a signal. It's data. The practice is what happens next. Do you let that signal spiral into panic? Let it cloud everything, or do you take its energy and channel it into preparation? The Stoics chose that. They found a way to take the very thing that paralyzes you and use it to build your footing. This connects to their idea of apatheia, which is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean apathy, not feeling. It means freedom from the passions that destroy reason. It's a state of equanimity, being undisturbed by the storm of reactive emotion so you can see clearly, so you can act wisely. Raw fear is one of those passions. It shouts, it distorts, it demands an immediate reaction, usually an unwise one. This alchemy, this premeditation, quiets the shout. It turns the volume down. Let you hear the actual message. There's something I value here, and it feels threatened without being deafened by the noise. The emotional energy isn't wasted in a frantic loop. It's repurposed, directed. It becomes fuel for making a plan, for strengthening resolve, for seeing the situation as it is, not as the fear paints it. Think of a leader before a big project launch. The raw fear is about public failure, wasted resources, a damaged reputation. It's a heavy, leaden weight. If it stays as fear, it leads to micromanagement, harsh criticism, last-minute panic changes that make things worse. But if the leader applies this alchemy, they sit with that fear. Deliberately, they walk through the possibility of the launch falling short. They visualize the specific metrics that might miss. They feel the disappointment. And then, with that charge now grounded, they begin the shift. They channel that energy into drafting a contingency plan. They pinpoint the key risks, assign clear responsibilities. They talk calmly with the team about what happens if plan A meets resistance. The fear hasn't vanished, it's been transmuted. It's no longer a paralyzing fog. It's now the blueprint for a backup generator. That leader's calm isn't a lack of care. It's the profound calm of having already met the specter of failure in your mind and built a tool to handle it. So bring this to your own experience. Can you recall a time when a spike of anxiety, maybe before a presentation, a difficult task actually pushed you into action? You felt the nervous energy, but instead of freezing, you used it to prepare more, to rehearse again, to check every detail. In that moment, you performed a small personal alchemy. You turn the lead of nervous fear into the gold of focused preparation. The difference between that and paralyzing worry was a single choice, the choice to move the energy from your emotional center to your planning center. To let the feeling inform you but not control you, that choice is the heart of it. It's how we stop being victims of our own sensitivity and start becoming architects of our response. What's one current worry for you right now that holds that kind of raw, untapped energy? The last part of this isn't just acceptance, it's something closer to love. Amor Fati, the love of your fate. When you premeditate, you're not just bracing, you're practicing a different way of seeing things. You're training to accept what comes. And then to love it, because everything that happens, the hard things especially, they give you a material, a chance to practice, a chance to become who you are. That's the Stoic summit, where preparation meets a kind of trust. Epictetus put it clearly. He said, "Don't ask for events to go as you wish for them to go as they do. And your life will go well." That's willing acceptance, not passive resignation, not giving up. It's an active cooperation. It's saying, "I'll work with what I'm given. I'll find the good in it. I'll make it mine." Think of an athlete who loves their sport. They don't just love the wins, the trophies, they love the game. The brutal morning sessions, the sore muscles, the loss that teaches more than an easy win. They love it all because it's all part of what they're devoted to. The hardship isn't separate, it's woven in, it's essential. Their love covers the whole experience. Amor Fati is that devotion applied to your whole life. Your life is the game, and you choose to love playing it with all its challenges. A job loss seen this way isn't a catastrophe. It's the plot twist that forced a new chapter, where you found a resilience you didn't know. A conflict in a relationship isn't just pain. It's the friction that polished a deeper understanding. Even illness, as hard as it is, can become a quiet space. It redefines what matters. The event itself is neutral. Your embrace of it as your fate is what makes it meaningful. So here's a quiet question. Can you look back? Find one event you resisted, railed against, that you now see as necessary. A breakup that led to self-knowledge. A professional failure that redirected your path. A loneliness that taught you how to be your own company. In hindsight, can you trace the line from that hardship to a strength you have now? That recognition is the start of Amor Fati. It's learning to trust the process of your life, even when the chapter is hard to read. This love is the ultimate freedom. It means nothing that happens is truly against you, because you've chosen to find the value in it all. Modern science is catching up to ancient wisdom. There's a clear echo of the Stoic practice of premeditation in contemporary psychology, in cognitive behavioral therapy. The core principle is the same. If you expose yourself to a feared thought in a safe environment, its emotional power diminishes over time. Therapists call this exposure therapy or stress inoculation training. It's a structured way to build tolerance to anxiety by gradually facing the very scenarios the mind tries to avoid. In this light, the Stoics were early cognitive therapists. They understood that to heal the mind's fear of the unknown, you don't run from the thought. You meet it with intention, in a space you control. Consider a therapeutic technique for someone with social anxiety. A therapist might guide them to vividly imagine walking into a crowded room, feeling everyone's eyes on them, and then rehearse staying calm, breathing deeply, engaging in a simple conversation. They do this repeatedly in the safety of the office. That mental rehearsal weakens the neural pathways of panic and strengthens those for calm. It's not so different from Seneca mentally rehearsing exile. Both are forms of emotional and cognitive rehearsal. Both aim to disarm a trigger by familiarizing the mind with it in advance. This validation from modern psychology is important. It moves the practice from abstract philosophy into the domain of evidence-based mental training. It shows the Stoics weren't just being grim or pessimistic. They were intuitively applying a psychological principle we now understand through research. They recognized the mind can be trained, that emotional responses can be reshaped through deliberate practice. So when you engage in this Stoic exercise, you're not engaging in a strange, archaic ritual. You're participating in a form of mental hygiene that has stood the test of both time and clinical study. It's a way to build psychological resilience that is both ancient and thoroughly modern. The Stoics made a clear distinction between the sage, that ideal of perfect wisdom, and everyone else. The person trying, the proficients, the one making progress, that's the key. The goal was never to become a statue, never to avoid the initial shock, the sting of something going wrong. The goal was to get better at the process, to shorten the distance between the event and your return to a reasoned response, to move through the difficulty with a little more grace than you managed last time. It's like learning to swim. The sage is the Olympic champion, effortless form. The proficient is you in your first lesson, splashing, gasping, but in the water. The champion started there too. Their mastery came from imperfect practice, countless sessions, not aiming for perfection from the start, aiming for a slight improvement. A longer glide, a smoother breath. This practice works the same. You are not failing if you feel fear. You are practicing. The aim isn't to never feel the wave of anxiety. The aim is to keep your head above water when it comes and to find your stroke again a little faster. So progress, it's not a blank slate, it's about the recovery. Yesterday, bad news might have ruined your week, sent you into a spiral. Progress means today, similar news still stings. You feel the disappointment. But after an hour or a few minutes, you find your footing. You take a breath. You recall what you've rehearsed. You start to think, okay, this is difficult. What's the first step I can take? The emotion is still there, but it's not driving. You've reclaimed it. That space between the event and your response gets wider. That's the measure. Take a realistic scenario. You're driving to an appointment. You get a flat tire. The ideal sage might feel only calm acceptance. That's the ideal. For the practitioner, the frustration comes, the stress about being late. Progress isn't judged by whether you felt that. It's judged by what happens next. Do you sit and fume for 30 minutes, amplifying it with angry thoughts, or do you acknowledge the feeling, take a breath, then move, call for help? Change the tire, notify the people waiting. The event is the same. Your journey through it is where the practice lives, so define this for yourself. What would progress look like with a specific fear? Feeling nervous before a presentation but still speaking clearly. Worrying about a loved one's health but channeling that into supportive action instead of paralyzing dread. Name one small, tangible shift. That's your target, not perfect calm. The next attainable step in your own resilience. That's the heart of it, meeting yourself where you are. And choosing to move forward, one deliberate rehearsal at a time. It reaches its full potential in the small moments, not just for shipwrecks, it's for traffic jams. Spilled coffee. The Stoics saw that a life of character is built in the minor irritations, the daily friction, the thing that wears down your patience, pulls you away from your best self. We save our mental rehearsals for the big, dramatic fears, but the true training ground is the ordinary inconvenience, a rude comment from a stranger. A sudden rainstorm on a day you planned to be outside, the computer freezing right before you save your work. These are the 1,000 tiny cuts. They can bleed away your equanimity if you're not prepared. Marcus Aurelius gave himself this advice each morning. He would remind himself, you will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful. He didn't say it to become cynical. He said it to remove the element of surprise, to greet those behaviors not as shocking personal offenses, but as predictable features. Like potholes on a familiar road, his preparation wasn't for the end of the world. It was for the start of the day. Consider your morning commute. You know, statistically, there will be delays. Traffic will slow, a train might be late, someone might cut you off. We know this, yet we're perpetually surprised, angered when it happens. Our expectation is for a smooth, unobstructed journey. Reality rarely complies. Now apply the premeditation. Before you leave the house, take 30 seconds. Acknowledge that delays are a strong possibility. See it in your mind, the brake lights ahead, the clock ticking. Feel that initial flare of frustration. Then, in that mental space, decide your response. You will take a deep breath. You will put on a podcast, some music you enjoy. You will use the time not as stolen from you, but as given to you. A few extra minutes to listen. To think, to simply be. You've just inoculated yourself against road rage. The event hasn't changed. Your relationship to it has. You move from reactive frustration to proactive acceptance. The power is cumulative. Each time you meet a minor annoyance with prepared calm instead of raw reaction, you're not just getting through that moment. You're strengthening a neural pathway. You're making equanimity your default setting, one small victory at a time. The muscle you build handling a long line at the grocery store with patience, that's the same muscle you call upon for a significant professional setback. The discipline is transferable, so a simple challenge for tomorrow. Pick one predictable, minor annoyance in your daily routine, the colleague who always complains. The household chore you dread, the spot where your internet connection always gets weak. Tomorrow morning, before you encounter it, spend 1 minute in mental rehearsal. Walk through the scenario, see the frustration arise, and then, in your mind, enact your chosen response. A breath, a shift in perspective, a quiet internal smile. Then go about your day, notice what happens. The event may still occur, but you'll meet it not as a victim of circumstance, but as a practitioner who saw it coming and decided in advance not to be ruled by it. A crisis doesn't usually give you time to think. It just arrives, and in that moment you act, you become whatever you've practiced. The Stoics saw premeditation as more than just mental armor. It was a kind of ethical rehearsal, a way to make sure that when you were tested, you'd act with justice. With courage, with character, not with panic or with selfishness. The question isn't whether hardship will come, it's who you'll be when it does. Will you be the person who shrinks, who blames, who takes the easy and dishonest path? Or will you be the person who stands firm, who helps, who speaks the truth even when it costs? For the Stoics, the only true good was virtuous action. Everything else, health, wealth, reputation, those were just preferred or dispreferred. They could be taken away, but your character, your choice to act rightly, that was the only thing of real value. And that choice is made long before the crisis. It's made in the quiet of your own mind. By rehearsing difficult scenarios, you're not just preparing to endure. You're programming your moral compass. You're pre-deciding your values so they're ready to guide you when the storm hits and clear thinking is hardest. Take a practical, modern scenario. You're in a business meeting. Your team is presenting quarterly results that fell short. The pressure is immense, and your superior suggests subtly misrepresenting a key figure. Just enough to satisfy the investors in the room. It wouldn't be an outright lie, they say, just a creative framing. The comfortable path is to nod along. To go with the flow, to protect your own position. The path of honesty feels risky. It could mean conflict. It could mean disapproval. In that heated moment, with all eyes on you, what do you do? If you've never considered this possibility, fear and social pressure will likely decide for you. You'll default to comfort. But if you have rehearsed this, not this exact meeting, but the core ethical conflict, the script changes. You've already walked through, in your mind, a moment where you must choose between comfort and integrity. You've felt the anxiety of that choice, and you've already decided in a calm state what your value is. You value honesty even when it's difficult, so when the real moment arrives, your response isn't a frantic calculation. It's the recall of a principle. You might say, I understand the pressure, but I believe we should present the data accurately and focus our explanation on the corrective plan. The action comes from a place of prepared character, not reactive fear. This is the profound shift. You move from being a passive object of circumstances to being an active agent of your values. The crisis becomes the stage where your character performs the role it has rehearsed. So pause here for a moment with a quiet question. What is one core value you would want to be certain you'd uphold if everything around you became uncertain? Is it fairness, compassion, courage, loyalty? Pick just one. Now, in your mind, place that value into a simple, stressful scenario from your own world. See the pressure, feel the pull toward the easier, less virtuous option, and then watch yourself choose the harder, right one. That mental act isn't morbid. It's the most hopeful preparation you can do. It's how you ensure that the person you aspire to be is the person who shows up when it matters most. That discomfort, that deliberate moment of unease, is the price you pay. The Stoics saw it as a fundamental trade. You can pay a small cost upfront in mental effort, or you pay a much larger tax over time in this diffuse, ongoing anxiety. They always chose the upfront cost every single time. This practice is just that choice. It's a shift in when you pay. You accept a few minutes of focused, maybe uneasy thought. And in return, you buy hours or even days free from that background hum of dread. The cost is short, sharp, contained. The benefit is long, quiet, liberating. Chronic worry is like a leak. It drips constantly, draining your focus, your joy, your presence. You might not notice each drop, but over a week, a month, a year, you're left depleted. The Stoic rehearsal is like turning off the water main for 15 minutes to fix it. There's a moment of inconvenience, you get the tools, you focus on the problem. But when you're done, the constant dripping stops, your mental energy stops draining away. You've traded a small, active discomfort for a lasting reprieve from a passive, wearying one. This points toward their real aim, eudaimonia, a life of flourishing, thriving according to your nature. All the Stoic exercises, from journaling to this premeditation, were investments in that. They were deposits into an account of inner stability. The withdrawal is a life lived with purpose and peace, no matter the chaos outside. The practice feels difficult because it's an investment. You're giving up the immediate comfort of avoidance for the long-term security of being prepared. Think of a vaccine. The injection is a quick, sharp sensation. A minor, localized discomfort. You accept that brief pain. Why? For the long-term benefit of immunity. You trade a seconds-long sting for months or years of protection against something far worse. The premeditation of evils works the same way. You're inoculating your mind. The brief discomfort of walking through a feared scenario is the needle. The lasting resilience, the reduced anxiety, that's the immunity. It's a profoundly efficient exchange, so bring it to your own experience. Weigh a simple cost. On one side, picture 5 minutes, sitting down to mentally walk through a specific worry, feeling the initial unease but moving through it with reason. On the other side, picture an entire day, carrying that same worry as a vague, heavy background anxiety. It pops up during work, it interrupts your relaxation. It fragments your sleep, which cost feels heavier, the short, focused engagement or the long, draining distraction. The Stoic argument is clear. The short-term cost isn't just lighter. It's transformative. It converts the energy of fear into the clarity of a plan. It turns a tax into an investment. One leaves you poorer in peace. The other leaves you richer in what you can actually do. The Stoics had this idea that our purpose is to live according to nature, and for a person, that nature is social. We're meant for community. They called it oikoiosis. It starts with caring for yourself, but it extends out to family, to friends, to your city, to everyone. So your own peace of mind, it's not a private thing. It's the foundation for your duty to others. A mind that isn't frozen by its own fear is a mind that can see what other people need, that can act for the common good. This practice, this thinking ahead in the quiet of your own thoughts, it ripples out. When you build resilience inside yourself, you add to the resilience outside. A community of prepared minds is a resilient community. You think of a leader in a crisis, a pilot in a storm, a manager during an outage, a parent in an emergency. Their main job in that moment isn't the technical task, it's to project calm, and that calm isn't an act, it's the outer sign of an inner preparation. They've rehearsed the possibility in some way. They've already met the fear of things going wrong in their mind, so when it happens in reality, panic doesn't take over. They can assess, they can decide, they can communicate clearly. That calm becomes a stabilizing force for everyone around them. It lets other people focus on solutions, not on the fear. Their personal readiness becomes a collective asset. This works in any group, a workplace. A team member who doesn't spiral over a missed deadline can help the group pivot to a solution. A family, a parent who meets money trouble with planning, not despair, gives the kids a sense of security. Your emotional state is contagious. When you inoculate yourself against the paralysis of the unknown, you stop spreading that strain of fear. You become a point of stability in your network. For the Stoics, virtue was always about action, and action happens in the world with other people. Courage, justice, wisdom, temperance, these are social virtues. They are shown in how we treat each other. You can't be fully just if you're too afraid of conflict to speak up. You can't be fully courageous if your mind is clouded by dread. The inner work of thinking ahead clears that fog. It prepares you to show up not just for yourself, for the people who rely on you, for the principles you believe in. So there's a question: who in your life benefits when you are less afraid? Think of one person, one group, your partner who needs you present, your children who absorb your emotional weather, your colleagues who need a clear-headed collaborator, your friends who come to you for support, your own capacity to be there for them, to listen, to offer counsel, to act when it's needed. That capacity grows in direct proportion to the peace you've built inside. Facing the shadows in your own mind doesn't just light your path, it makes you a beacon for others, helping them find their way through the shared uncertainties. Positive thinking can set us up for a fall. Our culture pushes a constant optimism. Visualize success, manifest desires, keep your vibes high. And that has power. It focuses you, it drives you forward. But when that optimism ignores life's basic unpredictability, it gets brittle. It becomes a hope that depends entirely on fortune. And fortune is fickle. Stoic premeditation is the complement. It's not swapping optimism for pessimism. It's building a more durable confidence, one that can withstand reality because it's already felt that chill. Seneca warned about the fragility. He said the man who trusts in fortune is like a sailor on a calm sea, believing the weather will never change. His confidence is real. Until the first storm, then it shatters. The Stoic sailor knows the sea. He respects its power. He's checked his gear, studied the charts. He knows what to do if the clouds gather. His confidence is quieter, unshakable, because it's rooted in preparedness, not a wish. Think of two entrepreneurs starting a venture. The first only does positive visualization. They see the product flying off shelves, the glowing reviews, the rapid expansion. All their mental energy goes into that single, perfect outcome. When the first major setback comes, an investor pulls out, a launch bug appears. Their mental world has no architecture for it. The setback feels like a betrayal. Their confidence, built on one narrow beam of hope, can collapse into confusion. The second entrepreneur also visualizes success. They want it just as badly, but they also do the Stoic rehearsal. They ask, what if the funding falls through? What if we get harsh feedback? What if a competitor moves faster? They don't dwell in fear, they walk through it like a strategist. They sketch rough contingency plans. They identify their core assets, the things that would remain no matter what. When a setback comes, it's not a catastrophic surprise. It's a scenario they've already visited. Their response is quicker, clearer. Their optimism is tempered with realism. And so it's stronger. That invites a question. Is your own mindset skewed toward one pole? Are you clinging to a vision of how things must go, getting anxious when reality hints otherwise? Or have you fallen into a defensive pessimism, expecting the worst to avoid disappointment? The Stoic path is the middle. It asks for clear eyes and a steady heart. It allows for hope for the preferred outcome, but it refuses to make that hope the only pillar of your peace. Your peace is built on something deeper, on your capacity to meet whatever comes. So just notice, where does your optimism feel most fragile? Where is it most dependent on things going exactly right? That might be the place where a few minutes of calm, realistic rehearsal could build a confidence no outcome can break. This practice won't stop the storm. That's the first thing to understand. It's not a spell against misfortune. It doesn't predict what's coming. It doesn't give you control over things outside your mind. Think of it as a shield. A shield doesn't stop the arrows from flying. It lets you stand your ground when they hit. That difference matters. The practice works on what's actually yours, your judgment, how you respond inside. It gets the mind ready to face hardship with clarity, not to stop hardship from happening. Expecting anything else is misunderstanding the deal. Life has challenges. That's just how it is. Our peace doesn't come from avoiding them. It comes from how we meet them. So that first feeling of fear, that jolt, might still happen. If there's a loud crash behind you, you'll startle. Your heart will race. That's biology. It's not a character flaw. Even a practiced Stoic would feel that surge. The practice isn't about deleting that human reaction. It's about the next moment and the one after that. It's about the recovery. Someone who's rehearsed adversity will find their composure faster. They'll move from being startled to a kind of assessing calm. The fear doesn't spiral into panic. It becomes a signal. You acknowledge it, then set it aside so reason can take over. The practice cuts fear's power to paralyze, but it might not stop its first appearance. This goes back to the central idea, the dichotomy of control. The practice works only on what's up to us, our judgments, our intentions, our efforts. It doesn't touch the external world. You can rehearse a financial loss with perfect calm and still lose the money. The value isn't in changing the event. It's in changing your experience of the event. You stop seeing it as a catastrophe. You start seeing it as a difficult situation you can handle. Your stability stays because it was never tied to the money. It was tied to your ability to adapt. So here's a quiet question. What's one thing you secretly wish this practice could do that it really can't? Do you wish it could guarantee your health, or make sure a relationship never ends, or promise your efforts will always pay off? Naming that wish is powerful. It shows you where you might be placing your hope in the wrong place, in the fragile world of externals. The practice doesn't fulfill that wish. Instead, it offers something sturdier. It offers the assurance that even if that wish isn't granted, you won't be destroyed. You'll find your footing, and in that assurance there's a freedom deeper than any guarantee. Premeditation isn't a complete system by itself. It's a single tool. The Stoics treated their philosophy as a set of connected practices. They all work together. If you combine this rehearsal of future problems with other habits, like setting an intention in the morning or reflecting at night, the impact grows. It becomes a cycle. You prepare, you act, you learn. Your morning premeditation creates a kind of readiness. It builds a buffer against the day's ordinary friction. Then in the evening, you look back. You're not looking to criticize yourself. You're looking to see where you stayed calm like you practiced and where you were surprised. That nightly review turns what happened into training. It closes the loop. You prepare, you act, you learn, and then you prepare again with better information. This integrated method shows up in the most famous Stoic text we have. Marcus Aurelius wrote Meditations. It wasn't a book for other people. It was his private journal. The writing of a man doing this exact work. You can see the cycle right there. Some entries start with premeditation. He reminds himself of the difficult people he'll probably see, the situations he might face. Later passages often reflect on the day. He examines his own reactions. He notes a moment of patience or points out a lapse. His journal was what held his philosophy together. It turned abstract ideas into lived wisdom. It was his nightly talk with himself. It made sure his morning preparation stayed connected to the reality of his life and didn't just become theory. Think about a simple routine you could try. In the first quiet minutes of your day, maybe with your coffee, you take 5 minutes for premeditation. You pick one specific, realistic challenge the day could bring, a hard conversation at work, a long drive, a task you've put off. You walk through it calmly in your mind. You decide on your anchored response. Then you go into your day. That evening, before bed, you take 5 minutes with a notebook or just your thoughts. You review the day with gentle curiosity. Where did you handle something well, maybe because of that morning rehearsal? Where did you react in a way you'd like to improve? The goal isn't self-criticism, it's recognition. It's gathering data for your next round of preparation. This pairing creates a rhythm. The morning practice builds proactive resilience. The evening practice builds reflective wisdom. So if you're thinking about bringing this old tool into your modern life, ask yourself one thing. What's one other practice, even a small one, you could pair with it to make it deeper? Is it the simple act of journaling at night, even a few sentences? Or a morning moment to set a single intention for the day? Or maybe a weekly review of what you've learned? The power is in the connection. When your preparation informs your reflection, and your reflection sharpens your next preparation, you're not just coping with events anymore. You're consciously building a resilient character one day at a time. Fear is temporary, character is permanent, and the practice of looking at what you fear, walking through it in your mind, it does something over time. It's not just managing the emotion in the moment, it rewires you. It builds a foundation so deep that courage becomes your default, not a reaction. That's the long game the Stoics were playing. It wasn't about feeling better today, it was about becoming stronger for a lifetime. Their horizon was a transformation of character where virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, temperance wasn't an effort. It was an expression of your nature. Think of building physical strength. One push-up today doesn't change your body, but push-ups consistently, every day for a year, that transforms your musculature, your posture, your endurance. The change is invisible day to day, but undeniable over months. The mental rehearsal of adversity works the same way. Each session is a single rep for your character. You're strengthening the pathways for calm assessment, for principled action, for resilience. Over time, this practice doesn't just help you handle fear. It reduces the amount of fear you generate. Your threshold for what feels threatening rises. What once sent you into a spiral now registers as a manageable challenge. You've built a deeper reservoir of inner stability to draw from. The Stoic ideal was clear. Virtue is the sole good, not wealth, not reputation, not even perfect health. Those are preferred, but they are fragile. Your character, your capacity to act rightly no matter the circumstance, that's the only thing of true, lasting value. And that character isn't inherited, it's forged. It's the result of 1,000 small choices, 1,000 quiet rehearsals. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up one day as the steady emperor. He became that person through a lifetime of reflections, of mentally preparing for the day's irritations and the empire's crises. His meditations are the record of that forging. Consider two people facing a year of professional uncertainty. The first person reacts to each new rumor, each market dip with fresh anxiety. They are perpetually off balance, their mood tied to the latest headline. Their decisions are reactive, driven by short-term fear. At the end of the year, they are exhausted and no wiser about how to handle stress. The second person practices this Stoic drill. At the start of the week, they take 15 minutes to calmly consider the worst realistic professional setback. They visualize it, then outline a rational response. They do this consistently. Over the year, something shifts. When bad news arrives, they still feel the initial concern, but it doesn't hijack their mind. They move more quickly to solution mode. They lead their team with a steadier hand. They sleep better. The uncertainty hasn't changed, but their center of gravity has. They are no longer just reacting to events. They are navigating them from a place of cultivated strength. The first person's year was defined by what happened to them. The second person's year was defined by who they became through it. So here's a quiet challenge. Project yourself forward 5 years. Imagine you have practiced this rehearsal consistently, not perfectly, but regularly. A few minutes each week walking through your fears with reason, then letting them go. Who is that person in 5 years? How do they carry themselves when faced with a loss, a financial pressure, a conflict they didn't create? What has changed in their relationships, in their work, in their own sense of peace? The difference isn't in their circumstances, which will always be partly out of their control. The difference is in their core. They have become someone who trusts their own capacity to meet life. Not because they are fearless, but because they have practiced over and over how to move forward even when fear is present. That transformation is the promise. It's not a quick fix for anxiety. It's a slow, steady construction of an unshakable self. The practice can feel stern, but its heart is gentle, this mental rehearsal. It's a quiet act of self-compassion. You're preparing a gift for your future self, the person you'll be maybe months from now, maybe years from now on some difficult day. By doing this hard thinking now, in a moment of calm, you're showing a profound kindness to that future version. You're sparing them the full force of blind panic. The paralysis of not knowing what's coming. You're handing them a map drawn in advance for when the terrain gets rough. The Stoic path is rigorous. It asks for clear-eyed honesty, but its ultimate aim is the good of the rational self. It seeks to protect your inner peace, your capacity to act with virtue, to keep that from being shattered by surprise, and that protection is a form of deep care. It's the care a craftsperson shows for their tools, keeping them sharp and ready. Not out of fear, but out of respect for the work those tools have to do. Think of it like packing an umbrella on a clear morning. It's a minor inconvenience. A little extra weight in your bag, but it's not a pessimistic act. It's a simple, kind provision for your future self who might get caught in a sudden downpour. That future self won't have to sprint for cover, won't arrive soaked and miserable. They'll just open the umbrella and keep walking. Your past foresight becomes their present comfort. The mental rehearsal works that same way. You're packing a mental umbrella, storing a reserve of calm reason for a day when storms might blow in. So there's a quiet question here. How can preparing for difficulty be an act of self-care? We often think of self-care as turning away from stress. Bubble baths, treats, and those have their place. But what if the deepest care sometimes means turning toward a potential stress, just for a little while, to disarm its power, to look at it with a friend's eyes for your own future well-being? That shift changes everything. It turns a discipline into a devotion, a duty into a gift. Freedom isn't about getting what you want. It's about not needing your happiness to depend on it. That's the deepest aim of Stoic work. The real liberation isn't from hardship. It's from the tyranny of opinion, the opinion of others, the opinion of fortune. When you rehearse every possible loss in your mind, when you accept it could happen, you perform a quiet revolution. You pull your happiness out of the marketplace of events. You stop trading your inner peace for validation, for good circumstances. That practice leads to the ultimate freedom, inner sovereignty. Epictetus starts his manual with a line that cuts deep. Some things are up to us, he says, some things are not. Our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, these are in our power. Our body, our property, our reputation, our public office, these are not. The whole project of a good life, he argues, is to sort your energy between these two columns, to invest everything in what is yours, and to hold lightly with a kind of dignified indifference to what is not. Premeditation is the training that makes this sorting possible. By mentally letting go of what isn't yours, your wealth, your status, the good opinion of a fickle crowd, you stop giving fortune a lever to move you. You become, in a profound way, invulnerable, not to pain or loss, but to the devastation those things are supposed to cause. Think of the peace of someone who has truly accepted the possibility of poverty. Not as a theory, but as a lived mental rehearsal. They know what they would do, how they would simplify, where they would find value. Because they've faced that specter, the daily anxiety about money loses its edge. They can work and earn without desperation, without their self-worth being tied to a bank statement, or the artist who has accepted obscurity, who creates not for fame, but because the act of creation aligns with their nature. Criticism may still sting, but it doesn't derail them. It doesn't reach their core because that core isn't propped up by applause. They're free to do their work, their best work, regardless of the reception. This isn't grim resignation, it's a luminous lightness, a life no longer spent in desperate seeking, but in grounded being. So here's the final, quiet question this practice invites. The one that changes everything if you let it sink in. What would you do, who would you be, if you weren't afraid of others' opinions or the random turns of fortune? If the fear of criticism or failure or loss just lost its grip on you, what bold conversation would you have? What authentic path would you begin? What love would you express without holding back? The answer to that question isn't found in waiting for courage to arrive. It's found in the daily, deliberate rehearsal of letting those fears go. In the quiet of your own mind, you practice for the freedom you are meant to live. It's a posture, a way of moving through the world with your eyes open and your heart steady. Realistic acceptance of how things are, prepared readiness for how they might change. Deep gratitude for what's here now, focus on the present task, commitment to your values, a resilient core that bends but doesn't break. It's proactive engagement with reality, not a passive wish for a different one. Marcus Aurelius talked about accepting what comes, loving the people fate brings you. Seneca said we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Epictetus drew that line between what's ours and what isn't. This mindset lives where those truths meet. It's a quiet confidence, like someone who's already walked through the shadows in their mind and found they could still see the path. Take a modern professional, call her Maya. Her day is complex. She wakes up, and in those first quiet moments, she does a brief mental rehearsal. There's a difficult meeting on her calendar. She considers it not with dread, but with the calm of a strategist. She acknowledges the possibility of strong disagreement, feels that initial flutter of anxiety. Then she decides on her guiding principle, to listen first, to seek understanding. She practices a moment of negative visualization, thinks of her health, her home, her partner. Feels a sharp spike of gratitude that they're here now. She enters the day prepared and grateful. The meeting is tense. A colleague challenges her proposal sharply. Because she rehearsed this friction, the sting of criticism doesn't spiral. She feels it, takes a breath, returns to her intention. She asks a clarifying question. Finds common ground. The project moves forward, not perfectly, but with integrity. Later, she gets an email. A hoped-for opportunity has fallen through. The disappointment is real, but her mind, trained in this way, doesn't catastrophize. It moves from the emotion to the practical. This is a dispreferred event, but not an evil. She thinks, what's within my control now? She drafts a polite reply, updates her plan, reaches out to a contact about another path. Her evening review is gentle. She notes where she stayed anchored and where she felt a reactive impulse she'd like to soften tomorrow. She ends the day not exhausted by what happened to her, but quietly strengthened by how she met it. That's the modern Stoic attitude in motion. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being the author of your response, not a character written by circumstance. So in one sentence, the mindset you're working toward, how would you describe it? That journey through the Stoic mind gives us a kind of map. We started with a definition, this practice called the premeditation of evils. And it sounds strange at first, but it's not about morbid worry. It's a deliberate drill. We looked at the psychology of it, how it works by inoculation. You face the shadows to dissolve their power. Then we saw its ethical heart. It's a rehearsal of character for the moments that matter most, and we traced what it can transform. How this simple rehearsal can forge a kind of inner freedom, unshakable. The core message is clear. This is an ancient exercise, but it's also a profound tool. A practical one. Its primary purpose is to disarm fear, the paralyzing fear of the unknown, to turn vague terror into something manageable, into what you can actually handle. Seneca guided a lot of this. He offered a final insight into the peace it brings. He wrote that the man who anticipates trouble takes away its power when it arrives. That's the quiet victory. It's not about avoiding life's blows. It's about having already felt their possibility. So when they actually arrive, you're steady. You're resolved, you're ready. If this idea resonates, you can begin small. Use that simple guide we outlined. Pick one specific concern, something realistic. Give it 10 minutes, a calm, reasoned examination, then let it go. Be patient with your progress. Remember, you're not the sage, you're the one making progress. Each small rehearsal is a rep. It builds the muscle of a resilient mind. So we close with a reflective thought. True courage was never the absence of fear. It's the preparedness to meet it. It's the quiet work done in the mind's quiet spaces, long before the storm appears on the horizon. That work is your anchor, your map, your freedom.